I had no idea the British press was so bigoted.
This One's Wife. Exposure rocks Hollywood. Hello, I'm H.G. Tudor. As you are aware, the Hollywood Reporter ran an article, basically as the industry Bible, about this one's wife, describing the fact that everyone was terrified of her, that she belittles people, that she doesn't take advice. It was not flattering. And as I've explained elsewhere, ordinarily this one's wife would dismiss such comments about her, if they had come from the British press, as simply being racist and motivated by hatred from them. But for it to come from the very Bible that she would want to be flatteringly reported in is a particularly problematic blow to her, and, as I've explained, would result in challenge film being provided because they're talking about her, and then there would be the amplification of this as other news outlets picked up on the story and talked about it. Thus, there is a threat to her control by the report itself, and this is amplified many times over by other news outlets and social media and people commenting upon it. It's therefore interesting to see how certain outlets utilize this information. For this one's wife, her response was largely to do nothing, to stay in a position of withdrawal and try and dismiss it. We have seen some clapping back by virtue of the attendance at the Alliance for Children's Rights and then Tyler Perry's party to try and deflect from this clear criticism of her. Whether it's worked, well, you can make your own minds up about that. But the reportage has continued, and it's worthwhile examining that further to understand the impact that it has upon a narcissist. And we turn to a piece written by Daniela Elsa for news.com.au to analyse that in terms of how are the Aussies reporting on this Hollywood Reporter blow against this one's wife, and how would this be received by the narcissist that is this one's wife. The article states there are stories and there are stories, in the capital S. There are the pieces that eddy and flow in the royal tides and tributaries of the internet and disappear into the tide. And then there are those that land with a cacophonic thud, sending up dust clouds visible from space. This weekend we got one of these stories, with a capital S, an expose from the ultimate entertainment industry Bible, the Hollywood Reporter, which would have to be the most devastating bit of reporting about this one's wife in years, if not ever. It's hard to know which particular detail or line is the most scathing. Everyone's terrified of this one's wife. Criticism, challenge fuel. A source close to the Duke and Duchess told the reporter. She belittles people. As you know, belittlement is a manipulation, born out of the absence of emotional empathy and her inherent belief that she is superior. She doesn't take advice. Grandiosity. She believes she knows that she's best. They're both poor decision makers. They change their minds frequently. Harry is a very, very charming person. No airs at all. But he's very much an enabler. And she's just terrible. She's absolutely relentless, a source has said, which demonstrates the repeated pursuit of the prime aims. She marches around like a dictator in high heels, grandiosity, haughtiness, fuming, ignited fury, and barking orders, sense of entitlement. I've watched her reduce grown men to tears. Just terrible. Everyone's terrified of this one's wife. Reduces grown men to tears. These are not lines that can easily be spun by a sweating Sussexite stuck on damage control on the phone to people and who is idly wondering if you can overdose on ashwagandha. Of course, there have been negative coverage of the only brief on the Royal Clock Duchess in the past, but previously it was relatively easy for the Sussexes to write these off as the work of that nasty of nasties, the pasty, doughy British press, and their natural inclination towards the malignant, the biased and the misogynist. For years, on podcasts, on TV, and in Harry's Spare, the couple has passionately prosecuted the case that they were and are victims of an establishment, victim mentality, and of a press deeply threatened by the arrival of a dynamic biracial duchess. When UK outlets have presented unflattering claims about the couple, it was all further proof of palace plotting and press prejudice, you see. Paranoia, victim mentality. In March 2021, the Times' seasoned and long-standing Valentine Lowe broke the explosive news that a formal bullying complaint had been made against this one's wife. The couple immediately countered, nullification of threat to control, arguing the revelations were part of a calculated smear campaign projection ahead of their Oprah interview and their palace demolition derby. Lowe alleged their communications secretary had labelled the Sussexes' behaviour towards staff as totally unacceptable, that young women who were being bullied to the point of tears, that there were a lot of broken people, that one staffer was completely destroyed, and that Harry and this one's wife were outrageous bullies. This time around, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex have no such obvious or easy recourse and cannot retreat to the moral high ground, nor can they easily dismiss this as just another example of pernicious British forces out to bring the far too caring couple down a peg or three. With this reporter's story, none of these go-tos are an option. For two people not adverse to sending out legal letters and who have in the past sued with a certain gladiatorial zest, or who are not averse to spinning, what is a real surprise is the final line from the piece in which yells at volume, Harry and this one's wife's current spokesperson declined to comment. Nullification of threat to control by remaining in withdrawal. Note the really stinging use of current in that sentence too. Nor can the Sussexes lump this reporter story on some solitary disgruntled former employee who was performance managed out of Monty Shitshow. After not knowing being able to recite 3 Mayor Angelou's quotes on demand, Mayor Roshan, the reporter's editor-in-chief no less, told Access Hollywood that a dozen people who have worked very closely with the couple, both previously and yes, currently, were interviewed for the story. Thus it's not just coming from one source, and is common with the narcissist of this one's wife's nature, that there is a multiplicity of people who have suffered as a consequence of her behaviour. You can't massage the message if it's coming from more people than it takes to play five-a-side football. Hell, even the very first sentence of the piece revives, like a zombified corpse, the damning name used by former staffers who have worked for this one's wife. The quitting of their latest Chief of Staff, Josh Kettler, after only 3 months in the job and on the eve of their replica Royal Tour of Columbia in August, makes him the latest member of the ever-expanding Sussex Survivors Club, as some former employees have taken to calling themselves. The club might need to start looking into sourcing more chairs. Senior staffers who have parted ways with the Sussexes in recent years include Toya Holness, their global press secretary, Christine Weil-Schwirmer, who was their PR head, Samantha Cohen, who had been the Duchess' private secretary, Catherine Saint Laurent, former head of the Archwell Foundation, Mandana Dayana, former Archwell COO, Ben Browning, one-time content chief, and the man who got their Netflix series made before bolting, per the reporter, and marketing chief, Farah Taylor. This piece, of course, reminds everybody of the number of staff that they've lost and makes it very clear that there's nowhere to go for this one's wife in terms of trying to put a spin on these allegations of her being dictatorial, haughty, dismissive, unpleasant to work with. The release of the reporter's bombshell could not have been more painfully timed. On Sunday, Harry turned 40 years old, marking the day with statements released to BBC and People. The choice of these two particular outlets so perfectly encapsulates the lonely one-man DMZ that Harry now occupies, a stateless duke who is neither quite British nor American. Rather than this past weekend serving as a bright spot for the Sussexes' PR wise, with King Charles and the Prince and Princess of Wales wishing the Duke a happy birthday, and reports that this one's wife had gifted Harry a mini-break with old friends, conveniently rebutting recent reporting the Duke has lost more UK friends than a proselytising vegan at a barbecue, we got the most damaging bit of reporting about the Sussexes since there was a demagogue light getting fake tan on the Resolute desk. Instead of Harry and this one's wife being able to bask in the glow of being acknowledged by the official royal social media channels today, even if the whole thing was about as personal and meaningful as a hastily proffered servo greeting card, the Duchess is being like a matcha sipping Mussolini in Manolos. This framing of the Duchess of Sussex as somewhat tyrannical will do the couple's careers no favours as they fast approach their impending professional crossroads. The Sussex prospects and star are not what they were when This One's Wife turned 40 herself in 2021. Now that they are done with their royal sabre-rattling endeavours, will Netflix renew their contract? Will American Riviera Orchard ever actually be launched? Will people actually fork out for royal-adjacent jam? At the time of writing, 48 hours after the release of the reporter story, Harry and This One's Wife have still not commented, nor have any of the outlets usually sympathetic towards them rallied to their case. If there is one thing that none of us should ever lose sight of in all of this, it's that bit of wildly ingenious, perpetually tiresomely applicable to writing about the royal family. The truth is rarely pure and never simple. Accordingly, this piece amplifies just how difficult the reporter piece is for This One's Wife. It resurrects many of the complaints about her. It demonstrates the high turnover of staff. It demonstrates just how many people have complained about her, that it's not just some lone wolf, but a dozen people who have worked for her in the past and work for her now, who maintain that she's a thoroughly unpleasant person. And this, of course, smashes the facade that she operates. As a mid-range narcissist, she wants the world to think that she's lovely and caring and wonderful. The evidence shows to the contrary. Here, yet more evidence has been proffered, and it has been amplified by pieces such as this by Daniela Elsa, which not only highlights the evidence, but also draws attention to the fact that it's very difficult for This One's Wife to do anything about it. She hasn't said anything. Of course, her narcissism will cause her to assert control by staying in a position of withdrawal, and there's been an attempt to deflect by appearing at the Alliance for Children's Rights event and also at Tyler Perry's birthday. But it still will not remove from those who know what she is and have long believed her to be this unpleasant bully that, knew it, yet more evidence that supports it. And pieces such as this by Daniela Elsa simply add fuel to the fire to demonstrate what an unpleasant narcissist This One's Wife is. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.